And thank you for staying with us. Now, tomorrow is World Down Syndrome Day. It's an occasion aimed at raising awareness of the rights, inclusion and well-being of people, especially children with Down syndrome. So do we have a public healthcare system that responds to special needs of people with Down syndrome? Well, let's find out. We're joined by Motlatso Moloi from the Olesego Kalushi Foundation. It's an organization that was formed as a lobby and advocacy vehicle for children living with Down syndrome in South Africa. Thank you very much for your time here on eNCA. Just first of all, of course, we know that there's also that stigma that, a government has been trying to work on, especially after the tragedy of Life Esidimeni in terms of mental illness, etc. But the kind of services that are offered, especially to children with Down syndrome, how does it look in South Africa? It doesn't look like we budget enough from schools to healthcare, etc.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me. As said, I am the founder of the Masego Rahlaga Foundation, and this foundation was mainly formed because of the inadequacy and inaccessibility of resources for children with Down syndrome, from a medical aspect all the way into education. We actually had to relocate from where we lived in Limpopo to Gauteng to look for better facilities, better medical health care, where we still struggle. So you can imagine someone who is in a better position of privilege, as I am, what more of the next family, the next child, living in the townships, living in the villages. So we still have a long way to go, and to start with in terms of inclusion, in terms of creating awareness, because we cannot help children that we do not know. So if families are not ashamed of their children, if families are able to come forward and say that we need help, if we remove the stigma of disabilities in general, but specifically for this, Down syndrome, the theme for Down syndrome World Day for this year is with us, not for us. And this is basically to say it moves to a human rights-based approach, where we no longer look at people living with disability, especially Down syndrome, as objects of charity, but more as people who are deserving of fair treatment, of equal rights and freedoms, of capabilities as well. And then when we integrate them into our regulations, into our policies, into healthcare, into education, we can now speak about inclusion.
And I mean, looking at the fact that there's also the stigma, like I was alluding to earlier, around people living with Down syndrome, there's also the worry that, a lot of people also express who have children living with Down syndrome, and how this contributes to the unfair treatment of women, because most of the time, because mothers have no schools to take their children to, it means that they have to quit their jobs to be able to look after their children.
That's a fact. I myself am a mother of a child with Down syndrome. It took me 5 years to come out because I was afraid. How is the community, how is society going to accept my child? If in institutions already they are born into discrimination, then what about in healthcare? What about in schools? So it is a big challenge, as parents, as mothers, that already the system disqualifies them. Already to raise a child with special needs is expensive. So now you have to have the grit to come out and say, I have a child with special needs. It took me 5 years, even in the position of privilege that I am in. So when you look at different mothers in the townships, they have to hide their children. They can't even get into special needs education at the very least. It's difficult to get into a special needs education. It's going to take us long to get to a place where children with special needs with Down syndrome are accepted into mainstream community, in mainstream schools as well.
So I guess what you're saying is that it's also going to be difficult to reintegrate people living with Down syndrome into, for lack of a better word and in inverted commas, the normal community.
Yes, that's the place where we should start. When you look at statistics, every 1 in 2,000 children in South Africa are born with Down syndrome. It is the most common genetic defect. But you ask yourself, where are these children? You ask yourself, in the hospitals, in the schools. Where are these children? So if we raise enough public awareness to say that children living and people living with Down syndrome have equal rights, have equal opportunities, then parents are more free to come out and say, we are ready to be helped. We are ready to integrate our children into the system because the system supports them, as opposed to now where to even find a school for your child is a struggle. To even find medical health care, they are born with different defects. My son was born with a congenital heart defect. He had to do an open heart surgery at 8 months. But I bet you in townships and villages, those in public health care, it's not easy to access those kind of services very easily. So we have a long way to go. There's many challenges, but a good place to start would be to raise awareness, to integrate, to include, to promote even advocacy for these children, for the families as well.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Motlatso, for speaking to us about this very important issue and, of course, just giving us the solutions around that. That was Motlatso Moloi from the Olesego Kalushi Foundation.